And I appreciate we've probably take 5 or 10 more minutes to talk, and then we'll open it up to the audience. But I do just want to ask you 1 or 2 more things. You didn't know in advance how you would react, whether you could go through with it. I mean, how do you sustain that protest day after day?
I think what the hunger strike showed was that you can't, you couldn't look at a group of people and say, yeah, we'll make it 40 days out of them, and maybe 50, 55, because people's bodies respond in different ways. One guy joined it, Brendan McLaughlin, and had to come off it because they discovered that he had a bleeding ulcer. He would have been dead within days, so it was like pointless, sort of. And one of the big things was they were told to drink at least 6 pints of water a day. And the only thing we did take was water and salt. And we're very foolish at the start putting the salt into the water and then trying to drink salty water, which is just, you can imagine, as opposed to dipping your finger into salt and taking it, which is okay. But that it is a critical thing throughout the whole period of the hunger strike, because your body is cannibalising itself. So particularly your kidneys come under a lot of strain, the toxins in it. So if you're not drinking, if you can't keep it down, and what happened, some people then, they were getting sick and not thrown up, and it would have happened particularly to Martin Herson, who died very unexpectedly after his 45 days. Would end up with kidney failure, and and there's tragic stories behind all of them, but I always thought Martin's even more so, because for that 2 to 3 hours, and his brother is with him, and I know Brendan, it's almost bizarre in a way, because he's in Martin's hallucinating, and he's jumping about the bed, and they're trying to hold him down so he doesn't hurt himself. He's banging his head against we were held in the prison hospital. And they have to watch that there for a couple of hours till he finally settles down, and then he dies shortly after, And I remember talking to Brendan, he says, because it's very hard to drink water after a particular period of time. Your sense of smell becomes intense as your eyesight goes. My eyesight went about 40 days, and your sense of smell is incredible. You smell water. You smell it, and someone can smell it. So they bring us in bottled water from Scotland and everywhere. And at the time, Brendan was saying about Martin and sitting him down. He says, the prison guard lifts the bottle and says, they bring us in here from Scotland. And you sort of think, there's brutality of one form, and then there's a certain brutality in another form that I think is even more cruel, So that's a wee bit of a side from it. But so the thing was to drink water, which then you feel very, very cold, and that's been the first thing I would have felt. You'd be taken out every day, weighed, blood pressure, checking your urine to see in case you are eating. What they did every day was they set your breakfast in, take it out at lunchtime, put a lunch in, come at tea time, put a tea in, take the so you always had food in the cell, which again, when your sense of smell gets really strong, becomes a problem, because the food's stinking after a while. After 21 days, they would move you to the prison hospital. We thought at the start it was for isolation. Their argument, which is probably legit, was that it's easier for them to do that every morning, take you out and weigh you and such like. And if there's any talks going on or a critical moment where someone needs to be resuscitated or whatever else, then yeah, it would make more sense to be in the hospital. So we'd all be moved to the hospital. So by the time I went, there was 4 had already died. I was on the hunger strike just the week before the delegation for Irish Commission for Justice and Peace come in, which is probably a big event in the middle of it. It's made up of people from the church, Dublin government, SDLP. To me it was totally ineffectual, but it probably unfortunately provided a bit of a smokescreen for, I think the Brits said a while, but what it provided for me was an opportunity to see Joe McDonnell. Joe McDonnell had taken the place of Bobby Sands, and Joe was always called Fat Joe, because even during the blanket, miraculously somehow he kept on weight. Whenever everybody else had, which is alright. I joined the hunger strike, I was 10.5 stone. I'm probably about 13 at the minute, and I like to think I'm not too overweight, So everybody was already malnourished, literally. Joe was still Fat Joe, and we were in the room, the canteen of the prison hospital, and everybody else was there Kieran Doherty and everybody who was on the Hunger Strike, and Kevin Lynch and all the rest. So the only one missing was Joe. And the door opened and this wheelchair was wheeled in. And I looked at the guy and and if I hadn't known Joe was the only one missing, I wouldn't have recognised this person in front of me. Well, I see even Kieran Doherty and Tom McKeown earlier there. It's this really big, really handsome guy, really well-made sort of guy. And even then on the Hunger Strike, he still had that frame, even though he was gone. But Joe was the most advanced at that stage, and his head was lying over to the side, and his lips were hacked, and there was like saliva coming out the side of his mouth. And he's been wheeled in by one of the prison guards. And you're allowed to smoke in the hospital. This is bizarre. You're not allowed to smoke down in the prison cells. You're allowed to smoke in the hospital and get a radio and get papers, because if you're in the hospital, then you have to wear pyjamas and dressing gown. So you're not asked to wear a prison uniform, so therefore you can't be charged with not wearing a prison uniform because you're wearing pyjamas. And if you're in the hospital, it must be that you're not able to work, you're not fit to work, and you're not breaking that rule, which is the two rules that we were breaking: refusing to wear a prison uniform and refusing to do work. So you're in the hospital, suddenly, you get all the concessions, you can smoke and everything. So Joe was wheeled in, and we're all there, and we are smoking, a cloud of smoke around the place. And it was only when he spoke, and you knew, that's Joe. It was, everybody get cigarettes or water, everybody get going, and it was like, it was a big lesson to me. I thought of it in later years that, not to look at someone who is disabled in some way physically and think somehow that means mentally they're not, because that's, I suppose, was coming into my head when he came in, and yet when you heard his voice, it was Joe. It was one of the other guys who was on the Hunger Strike described it. It was like you met him in a bar or something. What about you, mucker? You doing well? And then there was these talks, and again, it's all documented. Joe saying to Beck was there as well, and say like, I'll hold on as long as I can, but don't be accepting anything from me. I'll do what I have to do. And then he died a couple of days later, and there was no agreement. So that would have been the first introduction to it as I went back to the blocks. Came back up, so that was five dead, and the next 5 would have died while I was in the hospital. Well, sorry, apart from Martin, because Martin died shortly afterwards. Which was, it's a whole thing in itself, that some people just died like that there instantly. But in terms of physically going through it is that, you just get weaker and weaker, and I suppose the first thing that really struck me, I went up to the prison hospital, they had a bath in it, whereas you only had a shower down in the blocks, and I took a bath, and one of the screws had just said to me, like, don't be, screws in the prisoners are mixed. There were ordinary screws who had 6 weeks first aid training. And there was 3 of them, I think, who had been male nurses. One of them was a Catholic, had been a male nurse, who was really, really, really helpful. A guy called Paul Lennon. And it was him that said to me, like, don't be run the bath warm. Take it really lukewarm. So I thought, that's freezing, I got into it, but obviously it was warm because I thought I was having a heart attack. And it was just the heat. The water wasn't warm. But the other thing you realised, you had no hips. You sat in the bath. It was just your bones. And it was like, it's funny to say it, it's like a sudden realisation, I suppose, is because, to be crude and say, you don't look at your ass in the mirror, You're looking, if you're, up sharing, you're looking at a mirror, you see your face, you see yourself getting thinner. It was actually only getting into a bath where you realise the lower part of your body. And then later, as I say, that around about 40 days, and it happened to most people, eyesight just gets, at the start I would see vividly double, and then that started to become more of a hazy sort of thing, and then the lights started to annoy you, and so it's like, and then I say the sense of smell gets really, really, really powerful. The other thing we realised, and it was just by chance, at the latter stage of those who did last a long time before they died, was that they had sounds good, but had a bowel movement. And really, whenever that happened, their strength is really plummeted, and they usually died within about 3 days. So whenever that happened to me, I sort of knew, well, okay, there's 3 days at a stretch here, And what happened at those times too, they would let families come in and stay, and that had a big impact on people, because like Kieran Doherty, who you must remember too, was an elected TD, had taken really ill around 50 odd days, and his family were let in to stay. They would let 2 members the year constantly, and then he continued on up till 72 days, and I knew Alfie and Margaret, well, in later years. And they were saying like the impact of being in the hospital for that length of time was just devastating for them. They never wanted to go back, whereas some other families, we did take families back after the jail had closed and such like. I was on the 68 days, and it was Paul Lennon, the doctor, came in. He was a strange doctor, wasn't the usual one. The one who had been there in later years killed himself. I don't know if that was connected to the hunger strike or not, because I don't know what was going on at that time. I mean, I'm sure for them, it was the first time they were able to document in detail the effect on a body of prolonged hunger strike. So you can see scientifically and military means and all the rest of it, it would be something that they would want to document, so you never know what he was involved in. But anyway, this strange doctor came in, and Paul Lennon, who was it was a screw, but he was actually a nurse, and I think there was a humanity on him there. He says, look, he said to the doctor, that guy couldn't eat that. He physically couldn't eat that. I think it's wrong that it's put in there. And the doctor said, okay, we'll take it out. And then he says, I'm not saying he's going to die now or immediately, but I mean, he's 68 days in hunger strike, so he's not going to last much longer. I think his family should be allowed in. And the doctor said, yeah. Which is interesting. I never seen the doctor before, I never seen him after. And my family were allowed in. I was still lucid. All my family, it was my father, sister, brother, one sister, one brother. All asked me to come off the hunger strike. I said I wasn't. My mother never asked me. 69th day, I don't remember it. Apparently I was responding, but I was getting confused with people who was answering, who I thought I was speaking to. And then by the latter part of that day, stopped speaking. And on the Sunday, which was the 70th day, they apparently do a whole test with the reflexes, and there's nothing. And at that point they say, well, you're now in a deep sort of coma, or whatever they call it. What had happened that few weeks earlier, a few months actually earlier, was that families, I mean, this is the most tragic thing about the hunger strike, their families were the ones who had supported us throughout it. They weren't, my family wasn't Republican family, Bobby Sands' family weren't Republican families. I mean, they're not coming from that tradition. They want us to have political status, want to be recognised, but they're not IRA volunteers or anything, and they're watching as one-on-one days after the other. You had the likes of Father Fall, who had been a big supporter of the protests earlier. I mean, written extensive stuff about internment and all the rest of it, started to come out really against the hunger strike, called on the families to intervene, called on the wives, because it would be women, the mothers and the wives, to intervene if they had an opportunity. And that's what had happened several weeks earlier in the case of Pat McKeown, who's later died since. Which was, if you go into a coma, what they call power of attorney shifts to your next of kin, and they can make a decision. So now the pressure was on the family member, and it really happened in, say, three or four cases. And my mother was there, and that's she authorised medical intervention. And what they do is just immediately put you onto these 2 massive drips of vitamins and glucose and whatever else, and I regained consciousness in the intensive care unit of the Royal Victoria Hospital on the Falls Road, which was a experience too, you know.
Yeah, what was your feeling at that stage?
I suppose the first thing that really, I mean, I came around, and because I knew this had really happened, normally I realised I was alive. I was neither happy to be alive nor sad to be alive or anything else. I just knew I was alive. Try to explain it as if you imagine being tired and then multiply it by 100. That's what I felt, and it's not just physically tired, it's emotionally, psychologically. It's like, I mean, everybody who died wanted to live, and so you always use every amount of energy, and that is emotional energy, and that is because your family's there. When you come off the hunger strike, and you're battling against your family as well. On circumstances, the ego, you have to override the ego to say you're going to go on through this, and the outcome will be death. So I knew I existed. I didn't really care what's going to happen next week or tomorrow. Or I just accept it. If you want to talk about living in the now, and I like to live in the now, but that was a moment. But I mean, the other thing that really struck me was it was a voice. It was a female voice, and you realise you're not having a lot of female voices in prison. And she was telling me where I was and what I was doing, and she had her hand on me. And they were turning me over to the side, and she said, "Look, you're in the Laurence." So it was first name, so it wasn't like it were a number, 454 McKeown. You know, Laurence. It's a female voice, and it's a gentle touch. So even just that tactile thing of human touch. And just telling me, and you're here, and we're turning you over to your side this year because they keep turning you because say I was 7 stone at the end of the hunger strike, which is, do the calculations quick, 98 pounds or something. So like if you lay in one place, you're going to end up with sores or bones go through them. And but it's interesting, even those situations, it's I was often almost humorous. After a few minutes, she always stayed close by. I said, "Look, sorry, I have to go to the toilet here. I have to pee." He said, "No, that's fine." He said, "Lawrence, just in the way," and she insists you do it. I couldn't even move, you know. That's fine. About 15 minutes later, I'm feeling again this sensation that I need to urinate, you know. And I'm all in it in, you know, because I'm standing like it's only 20 minutes. I mean, this is bizarre, you know. And then Philly says, "Excuse me, I'm terrible. Sorry, but I need to go to the toilet again." I don't know why. She says, "Lawrence, there's 2 drips in you going through you at a rate of whatever else. We would be worried if you weren't, you know." It was funny, I end up thinking of something, like in the middle of that there, like what I'm thinking is of embarrassment of saying to her that I need to pee again, you know. And then after that I was moved the next day into what is call it the military wing, the Musgrave Park Hospital, where they had a secure wing that prisoners were taken to every day. And there's 4 others, I think, there at that time who had been on the hunger strike. I was in a separate ward for about 3 days, and then moved into the other. I know people always ask, well, what was it like when you seen your mother again? And it was fine. I mean, I always had a brilliant relationship with my mother, and yet I don't remember any significant conversation with her ever. I mean, I was away from her when I was 17, but there was just connection there, which I feel to this day she died within 2 years of the hunger strike, and I would say the hunger strike probably killed her. And thankfully, I suppose, we had the maturity at that stage, and that's all the ones, the hunger strikers, who survived, to realise that our families were the backbone of it. I never held anything against it. I wouldn't even thought of holding anything against it at all. I totally understood what you did. I never thought it would end up that way. I thought I probably was going to be like Tom McAwee, who I seen one morning, and he was sitting on bed smoking. Tom loved a cigarette, and next minute it was gone, you know. So no, I think, and then after 3 weeks, I was taken back to the blocks. And others, they had kept, the first hunger strikers, they had kept in hospital for about 6 weeks. I think now they were trying to really discourage the others who were still on hunger strike. So we were taken back to the blocks. But just a couple of days after going back, the hunger strike was called off. So.
Laurence, I am going to ask everybody to thank Laurence for his comments.